Okay, we're live here at the 5-Minute Bark, and today I talked this guest into coming on because he's not in town too often. This is my great friend. I've known him since 1994, I believe. Mr. Sam Wolanyk. Sam, say hello.
Hello, Dennis. Thanks for having me.
All right. Sam now is a U.S. citizen of different nature, and he's a very, very interesting guy, and he's done so much in his life to be a patriot for all of us here today. But today, we're kind of going over lessons learned in our lives, and we don't even know what our topic is, so I'm just going to actually kind of lead us into it here today. So, Sam, first off, why don't you tell everybody a quick little handy-dandy info guide on who you are, besides being my friend?
That's an interesting question. And really the first thing that I want to say is I have to correct you, as I often do.
Uh-oh, I'm being corrected already.
I'm not a patriot.
No?
I tried going that route, and it's silly. It just doesn't work. So a patriot is somebody who loves their country. And when you start dissecting that and seeing what that really means, all sorts of questions come up. And, you know, I know that you didn't want to do this show with a political bent, but unfortunately, because of the scourge of statism, that permeates just about everything that we do. So it's really hard to consider any question in a vacuum outside of the realm of statism and everything that these violent people do that makes all of our lives more difficult. So when you say, you know, a person is a patriot, then that person is someone who loves their country. So what's a country? It's really just an arbitrary line drawn on a map somewhere where people on one side of the line are ruled by one violent regime and people on the other side of the line are ruled by another violent regime. And you can hop from you know, farm to farm, as it were, if you consider that the reason that states exist is to extract wealth and through tax revenue and inflation from other people. But at the end of the day, you're still part of the system, and you can do what I did, which is try to fight it, and that really doesn't work.
As much as you try.
Yeah, and you can do the other thing that I did, which was try to reform it, and that really doesn't work.
And then try to escape from it.
You can try to escape from it. That's often difficult. The best thing you can do really is set up your life in such a way that the state has a minimal impact, if any impact at all. And that's really the best thing that you can do. So I would not say that I'm a patriot at all.
Okay.
But what I am is a humanist. I
will spank myself now. I was a bad boy.
I really believe in the ascendancy of man and the potential of human beings, if only we can evolve ourselves past the paradigm of statism. And when you think about all the improvements that the human beings have accomplished over the last 4,000 years, but still we're stuck in this thing where we can say stealing is wrong, initiation of violence is wrong, it's always wrong, always. Unless, of course, the person doing it couldn't make it as a Walmart greeter and is wearing a shiny badge, then it's okay for them to beat the crap out of you and take your money.
Okay, so I'm going to interject.
No.
Yes, I'm going to interject here.
You're violently interjecting. Look, this is a subjugation that's inherent in the system.
So listen, Sam, we were enjoying some conversation last night, and we were both being confronted with the question of, hey, you know, what do you think government should do about this, and what do you think government should do about that? And both you and I were very persistent on saying that we don't need government to tell us what to do. And what I mean by that is for the fact of everybody's saying, well, let's have government fix our healthcare. Let's have government take over how we treat our environment. Let's have government take over how we do this and do that. And both you and I were just clear on why do we need government to do that? It's simply saying to the next person next to you that just take care of the things you need to take care of and do them in the right way. And I'm not going to put a rule on you. I'm just going to tell you and share what I need to do. If you want to elaborate on that.
Well, yeah, I think that's actually a really interesting point, because when people say we need government to do X, what they're saying is I want men with guns to make other people do these things. No one ever says, I want men with guns to come to my house and make me do stuff. It's always directed outwards. Everyone always wants government to do things to other people. And what most people never understand, because so many people will never look past step one, is that once you
initiate that,
someday it's going to come back on you.
Absolutely. Every single time.
Do you want $1 million business? Here's $1 million business. And I've thought about this, and I've never done anything with it, but I swear to God, go up to 50 different people on the street and ask them if they need to be governed. Do you need to be governed? Every last person will say no. And they'll always say, oh, but there's the crazy people. List them. Who are they? No one can ever list anyone that they know in their lives that actually needs to be governed either. But that's not really that important.
But yet we always find ourselves looking to use government as a control system, which is, I guess it's just a brainwash that people really have, is they don't really understand that you don't need to look to government to get things done. I don't need to have the government tell me how to build a building. I don't need the government to tell me how to handle my dog. I don't need my government to tell me especially how to handle my kids.
Right. Well, and but Dennis, even you yourself just made the fatal error, which is to say we always look towards the government. That's a collectivist mindset.
That's true. You're right.
And I never say that.
I'm going to spank myself again.
You're going to be black and blue by the end of this. No, I never say we. I always speak in terms of I. I don't need this. I think you probably don't need it either. But anyway, my $1 million business idea, just start selling t-shirts that say, I don't need to be governed on the front of them. That's it.
Right.
Everyone would buy one because no one actually believes that they need to be governed. They think that everyone else needs to, even though they can't name who that person actually is.
Right.
So I think it would be great to see a bunch of people running around with t-shirts like that.
I don't need to be governed. Good statement. So elaborating on this, I mean, if you really think about everybody collectively saying, I mean, it's so simple. We need to put a rule and get a state for that. This is a perfect example because I got a speeding ticket some time ago, and at that time I had a very fancy car that was very fast, and I think I've had this conversation with you before. It is engineered to perfection. The thing can do 150 miles an hour.
I've driven that car 150 miles an hour.
And you've driven it, yeah.
You were in it.
Yes.
In the desert.
And I'm on a road that's flat, straight, and had no cars on it at 4 a.m. in the morning, and I got a ticket for going 80 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. And the speed limit there, I believe, is 70 miles an hour or 60 miles an hour. Doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. But my car is a race car. Yes. It can stop on a dime. It can go from 80 to 10 miles an hour faster than 99% of the cars on the street.
It is a very thinly disguised race car with 4 doors. That's the disguise right there. It's got 4 doors.
But I guess what I'm saying is I'm being forced with a ticket for $500 for speeding when I wasn't really speeding based on the vehicle I had. I mean, sure, if I was in a horse and buggy doing 80 miles an hour, that's a dangerous situation, right?
Well, even if it is dangerous, the larger question is who's the injured party? And this was a staple of American jurisprudence from way back in the day that everyone has completely ignored. The Supreme Court has ruled time and again that in any criminal case, there has to be an injured party with a distinct and palpable injury. And I actually went into court and argued a traffic ticket, which was a speeding ticket. And I kept asking, who's the injured party? Who is the injured party? And it got so vexing for the CHP officer that she finally screamed that she was the injured party. And I was like, terrific, great. How were you injured? And she said, it hurt my eyes to see you drive that fast. I was like, Your Honor, come on. And, this was back when I believed in the separation of powers and, the legislative, judicial, and executive branches, and the system of checks and balances, which is, of course, is another fiction. The best way to think about that is, Cerberus, the 3-headed dog that guards the entrance to Hades in Greek and Roman mythology. None of those heads is going to ever attack the other 2 heads because to do that would imperil the organism itself. So I've got the CHP officer dead to rights. There's no injured party. She's making a frivolous argument. She's claiming that she's the injured party and that her eyes hurt. And even though we all know that's not true, and she couldn't put a dollar value on it, which is also necessary. And I made a plea to the judge to throw the case out on those bases, and the judge goes, no, overruled. So let's talk. All right, let's talk naive. All right, and you're saying, well, what is naive? It's avion spelled backwards.
Yeah. So naive. Well, just today, 2 hours before this podcast, we ran into naive, And we had talked last night of a few occasions where you've been in a situation where naive has been involved, where, well, people just didn't know what they were telling you or controlling you to do. For example, we had our dogs in front of my house.
Right.
And your dog is a service dog, and
Yes.
somebody's come up to you and telling you that you need to put your dog on a leash, and you're saying, no, that's okay. She's a service dog. And, well, that doesn't matter. She should be on a leash, and blah, blah, blah.
Right. Well, I don't think that was so much naivety as ignorance. I mean, that woman was
naive to the rules. I'm naive to the fact of maybe I should listen to somebody and maybe look at the rules before I continue to battle with you.
Well, yes, but I would still say that she was just ignorant and also infected with that statist mindset that everyone must be controlled at all times in all places. Right. And that's part of the reason why I left the U.S. and moved where I moved to, because where I moved to, the government is insolvent. They're broke. They don't have the money to pay people to mess around in your business and harass otherwise peaceable people. Now, if you have your dog off leash and the dog is causing a problem, if it's attacking somebody, I would expect somebody to stab or shoot it. That'd be great. Right. I'd be fine with that. Right. But when you have an obviously intelligent animal that's sitting there looking at this woman like she's crazy and not harming anybody, where's the victim? Who is the victim? Where is the distinct and palpable injury? There is none. So shut up, mind your own business, and walk on.
Right. And we've been in this situation, both you and I, going to breakfast one day, where a similar situation where there's uneducated parties involved. And
oh God, you don't want to go into that. Can't that be a whole nother podcast?
Yeah, that could be a whole other podcast. But it's similar, isn't it? I mean, it's somebody trying to take control and tell you what to do when you already told them that I'm following the rules, and they did not want to go and they did not want to take the time to go and actually find out what the rule is themselves, only to find themselves very embarrassed.
Yes, and correct.
And by the way, we pay these people over $100,000 a year to know these rules.
Sure. Yeah. Dennis is referring to an incident with the police some years ago. And that could be a whole other podcast. We could get into the concept of qualified immunity. Do you know what qualified immunity is?
No, but I'm going to learn right now.
This is fascinating. So what does anyone tell you? What is the soundbite that everybody parrots about ignorance of the law?
I wasn't listening because I was looking at the time thing.
Okay. So I'll ask again. What is the soundbite that everybody repeats about ignorance of the law?
The soundbite to repeat is, no, I'm right.
No. Ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Right.
You've heard this before.
Oh, yeah. You explained that last night.
Yeah. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. And you can get arrested or ticketed for anything. And going before the court and saying, look, I didn't know that this was against the law. They'll say, well, ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Right.
Unless, of course, you're a cop. Police get something called qualified immunity, where it actually behooves them to not know the law. So theoretically, a police officer could break down your door, come in here, take out a billy club, and beat the crap out of you. And you could sue him for, well, you're not allowed to bring a criminal case against him. They can only bring criminal cases against you. But you could sue him in civil court, and then you go before a civil court judge, and the officer can say, I did not know that was against the law.
You get away with it.
They'll claim it's called qualified immunity. The people who are supposed to enforce the law, the people who are charged, who are allowed to violently enforce the law, do not actually need to know it. And the first time they get a pass. And it could be as bad as he beats the crap out of you with a billy club, and they give him a slap on the wrist and say, don't do that again. Now you know. And then next time he comes in and shoots you, and he goes, well, I didn't use a billy club. And they go, are you claiming qualified immunity again? Yes, I am. Okay, well, you're not allowed to shoot innocent people either. Yes, qualified immunity, Google it. It'll curdle your blood.
So we're going to move on from this to where you and I kind of found a space in our life we're moving on from just endless talk, I guess I want to say stress that it brings into your life, because you can endlessly talk about this and nothing's going to happen. It really isn't going to happen. We
Correct.
can get presidents, we can get people, we can movements, we can do all this stuff. But at the end, it comes back to what we said in the beginning. It's me talking to you talking to the next guy is the only way things are going to change. Government's not going to change it. It's been proven over and over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Yes.
So with that in mind, it's coincidentally, we both find ourselves independently finding ourselves trying to find, basically finding ourselves not wanting to deal with that stuff and just basically letting go of, so to speak, these thoughts and these motions in our head that want us to drive in that direction. So I notice you've been really working on that, and it's actually been incredible because I've been bringing up these kind of subjects, and you're like, I just don't want to go there anymore. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that's been tough for you to train yourself to let go.
Yeah, it's been some effort. Do you understand the difference between knowing versus realizing?
Knowing doesn't
Versus realizing. So you can know something, and it's a fact that you can parrot and spit out. Anytime somebody asks, like.
Well, all the things you've just talked about, you've known about, but now you're realizing.
Well, yeah, the realization is, and this is just my opinion, but the difference between knowing something and realizing is when you realize something when you can know a fact and you can repeat it endlessly and win the $64,000 question, whatever. Where does true happiness come from? True happiness comes from within. Everybody would say that, but very few people actually understand what that means. But when you realize something, that's when you take that fact and you bring it inside you and it actually becomes part of you. So that's when you have a realization about whatever
Something.
it is. Yeah. So, for years when I was doing my political activism, and you were kind of laughing at me and telling me that it's not going to change anything, and I would get really frustrated. I remember getting really frustrated with you about that. And in the end, at the end of the day, you were correct. And now even though I think I knew back then that it was going to be ineffectual, but I believed otherwise, and I really wanted to make a difference. And now I realize that it was pointless. It was a big waste of time. The system is the system. It's not going to change. You're not going to fix it. You're not going to fight it. You're not going to overturn it. There isn't going to be a big revolution and restore the Constitution, rah, rah, rah. None of that. None of that is going to happen.
Because nobody wants it. And number two, you and I live in a bubble of our own anyway, that really all this stuff that we are arguing for would really make our lives more difficult, because you and I live a very free life. There's nobody really controlling our lives to any dimension that bothers it.
Right, correct.
You do what you want to do, and I don't think you've been restricted in any way besides trying to get on an airplane.
No, I even figured out a workaround for that.
So see what I'm saying? Like, we work around the system. And, okay, you want to put that rule in? Okay, that we realize that rule is for everybody else, and we just bump around it.
Right.
Whereas the rest of the world is stuck with it.
Right, correct.
So I think the realization is like, okay, I can accept that the fact that all this stuff is really not for me. It's for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like we were talking in the beginning, right?
Yeah. And it's not, I know, some people might be scoffing saying, well, listen to these elitist a-holes, but it's not elitism. It's letting go and letting people be who they're going to be and how they're going to be. I was trying to gain my own freedom by freeing everybody else. And I figured out that most people are pretty comfortable in their chains. They live their lives and they never do anything with them. They never do anything significant with their lives. And that's just how they are. And you have to let them be.
Right.
That doesn't mean that you have to follow that same paradigm. You can break out, you can do something different. You can free yourself. And that was really the realization was in that for that paradigm was you can't free anybody else. You can only free yourself.
Right. Exactly. And I've learned that over and over again with friends who had drug addictions and bad marriages and bad friendships. And over and over again, you're taught that they have to learn it on their own. And when they ask, you're welcome to give opinions and give them strong and even remind them that you're not going to like my opinion because it's real and it's true and it's from the outside.
Yes.
But, I get them back, and I get my own bubbles too where I need support as well. So, but I can't say I'm above everybody in that way, but I'm more awakened or used to realization like you're talking about in these situations, and both you are too. So, but I've really seen a massive difference this time around, seeing you that you have let go, and the realization part is coming to reality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So So where does it go from here?
Well, I'm actually excited because I think the world is becoming a less and less violent place as time goes on, even though it seems like it's getting worse and worse. And that's just a function of the media and how much,
how much hype they want to put into it.
Yeah. How much the world is bombarded with, oh my God, the sky is falling. But really people are learning over time the value of cooperation versus coercion. And once they've learned that lesson, it's starting to seep into the global consciousness where if it's much better for me to persuade you of something instead of putting a gun to your head and making you do what I want, why does that not work in all areas of our lives? And the truth is it does work in all areas of our lives. And as people make that realization, people are pulling away from government, political parties are getting smaller and smaller. The fervor with which, people are, cheering for who their master is going to be is getting less and less. And we're seeing sovereignties break up into smaller and smaller parcels, and they're going to start competing for people like businesses compete for customers. And I think all of this is very positive, and I think that I really believe that we're on the cusp of the next phase of human evolution, for certain people, for people that and I'm going to sound like an elitist bastard right here, but for people that I consider enlightened, people who I can connect with, who think about the meaning of what they're saying before they say it, are not on autopilot, people who are awake and aware and are looking at what's going on. I have a lot of hope and positivity for those people.
Well, I mean, knowing you for so long and all that you've done, I can vouch for the fact that you don't just say things to just say them. There's plenty of educating yourself behind it. There's plenty of reading behind it. Not only just like reading and just like saying, okay, that's mine, I own it. But you actually go out into society and test it and vary it and try it. You don't just, okay, I read this and this is what it is. I read this and this is what it is. This guy told me this. No, you take it out and you you literally put it into function and see, okay, this is real.
Yeah, it's really fun to test. Because a lot of what you learn does come from books or something that somebody else came up with. But instead of just adopting it, wholeheartedly, it's fun to take a piece of that and take it out into the real world and test it. And can I tell you about what I've been working on, what I've been testing
Absolutely.
most recently that has been really fruitful? Are you familiar with the concept of nonviolent communication?
Nonviolent communication.
Yeah.
Tell me.
It's this process of how to relate to people in a nonviolent fashion, and
I love this stuff too.
It's great. It's really great,
and it's amazing how easy it is.
It's not easy for me. It takes some practice, but once you're aware of, because very few people will walk around and be barking orders at people and do this or else, unless of course you're a police or you're the police or a politician or something like that, because that's their whole paradigm. But what people do is in their day-to-day lives is much more insidious. They'll say things like, Dennis, when you were late for this podcast, you made me feel angry, you made me feel fat, you made me, and you're giving away your power, because when you say something like that, what I'm telling you is that my emotions are completely under your control, and whatever you do affects me in this way, and I'm just this pawn in this great chess game. And it sucks.
And it's so untrue, because you control your own self and your own emotions, your own thing. And
exactly.
Everybody blames everybody for what happened to them.
Right. And NVC requires you to be really emotionally connected to yourself and to own your crap and to examine yourself and figure out what you're feeling and why you're feeling it, and then articulate that in a non-confrontational manner and just make requests of people. Instead of me saying, Dennis, when you were late, I was, you were late, you're an inconsiderate jerk, I'm, angry, whatever. It would be something like this. Dennis, when you tell me that you're going to be at our podcast at 12:05 and you don't arrive until 12:15 like you did today, I feel frustrated because my need for timeliness and efficiency is being compromised by your bad behavior. Or I'm sorry, not your bad behavior, by your lack of punctuality. Would you be willing to make an effort to be on time for these podcasts in the future? And then you can either say yes or no, and I have to accept whatever the answer is. And that's actually a big part of it, because I had a recent relationship.
Because then you want to bark back at them if they say it the wrong way.
Well, no, maybe. I was just going to say I just ended a relationship with a woman who claimed to be a proponent of this and really believed in it, but ultimately couldn't do it because when the time came for her to make the request, sometimes I didn't agree to whatever it was that she was asking, and that there's nothing wrong with that. And
what her to death.
Well, and what she's supposed to do is just take that information and do whatever she's going to do with her life, adjust her life accordingly. If I'm not operating in a way that is beneficial to her, she can choose to end the relationship or whatever in a nonviolent fashion. She wasn't willing to do that. It was always, well, why not? And no, I want you to do this and these sorts of things.
Right.
So I make a habit of letting people know, people that are close to me, that it's totally okay for you to ask anything that you want. You can ask anything that you want of anybody. You just have to be man enough to accept what the answer is.
Exactly.
You know, you walk up to a girl in a bar and say, would you like to go have sex in the, you know, back in the alley? Maybe she'll say yes. Maybe she'll punch you. Maybe she'll kick you in the balls. Maybe she'll slap you. Maybe she'll think about it. Maybe she'll call her bouncer boyfriend over. Whatever. You're free to ask. You just have to be willing to accept the answer and deal with the consequences.
That's a tough question to ask too.
Have you ever tried it?
No, but maybe someday I'll have to try now.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's say it and wait for the answer and live with it. And I'm working on that big time in my life. It's really something that's really important to me to instill in how I think and how I portray people and how and accepting of the answers, because I'm one of those people that would be on that other side. It would be hard to accept the answer. Like, hey, you know, man, you should be doing this. You should be doing that. That's been a part of my life. A lot is hey, do this. You know. But Dennis, the realization is they're gonna do what they do, and you're gonna like it.
Yeah. Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. They're going to do what they're going to do, and you don't have to like it.
Right,
but they're going to do it. But
in the end, you have to be okay with it.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, that's acceptance. You just have to.
It's called the law of allowing. If you can become perfect in allowing, you have mastered the human race. Because if you could tell me, hey, you know, Sam, I really want you to stop, you know, eating that food. It's going to give you cancer, or stop smoking those cigarettes. You're going to die. You're like,
I bet
Dennis,
you do. Mind your business.
Yeah, but you're like really wanting that person to stop.
Yeah.
Like really, because it's killing you. And you tell me, no, well, I'm going to keep smoking cigarettes because I want to smoke cigarettes. I have to sit there and accept that and be happy about it. And that doesn't make any sense at all. But if that's what you want, then I should allow you to have what you want.
I agree with the allowance. I don't think you have to be happy with it. And I think you would be well in your power to be like, you know, Sam, you're my friend, and I understand that that's what you want to do. And I think you're going to die, and I don't want to watch you wasting away. So,
but just how you said that, you're okay with it. Meaning, yeah. I guess I'm saying happy. You're not going to sit there and go, oh yeah, hey, great, go kill yourself. But you're going to say, okay, I'm going to accept that, and I'm going to be okay with it. I'm not going to be like, freaking fracking did, you know, you're an idiot, and, you know, so.
I might be an idiot, though.
Yeah. Well. So do you get what I'm saying there?
I do. Yeah.
But it's definitely something to learn, is to allow other people's and allow people around you to say and do what they want, and vice versa, to say what you want and allow for the response.
Sure, of course. Yeah. And that word that you just used is actually really important, response, because what most people do is react. And if you can stifle your first impulse and consider the situation and what the other person might actually be going through emotionally and what you're going through emotionally, then you can respond in a way that is productive and beautiful, instead of devolving into a downward spiral, a bickering argument. Like, you know, you see this happen all the time with people. And I've done it. I mean, I'm not some lily white angel, but I am aware that I'm not an expert at this, and I'm making efforts to get better at it. And I'm also breaking ties with people who are not willing to examine their behavior and not willing to make strides in this direction. I'm not saying that this is like the end all be all of how people should communicate, but it's the best I've ever found. And I'm willing to change my mind about anything. If someone can show me a better way, something that works better, goddamn, bring it on. I'd love to see it. Which
leads me to another conversation. We've had a lot of good talks already, just in the last 24 hours. We haven't been together for 24 hours, but
we're not together.
Well, I don't know. It's a new law that just came out, you know. we could get married and we could go out and meet women together.
Yeah, we could. I think you'd be a pretty good wingman.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, I would let you sleep alone. But which leads to the next thing that I just forgot about now that I was talking about that, is that, God, I forgot. And it was good, and I wanted to talk about it. No,
we were talking about relationships, people, letting people do what they're going to do, accepting it, cutting people out of your life who are...
There you go. Okay. So we had talked about, like, we're both wanting to be around people that are going to educate and and help us kind of learn and grow and more. And as you kind of spoke before, you're going to the Burning Man, you're going to be really excited about going there. And everybody there is just all about or learning about that. Everybody that comes there becomes awakened. But obviously we're kind of already in that place, but we're talking about how surrounding yourself with the people that are just going to bring value into your life is just so much a big step in a new direction. And
Yes.
I've been in that place before when I was a professional athlete, and have kind of since kind of wandered more into the social world, and only to find out that every day goes by and there's nothing gained, because you're just another, night out in the town, and it just goes over and over again to nowhere land. But
Right.
we were talking about how, man, it's just so great to just sit here and talk about this and help each other think about this, or even create something with our hands and do it, versus just sitting around socially talking about something that's just a big loop.
Right.
The social loop.
Yeah.
The social etiquette, the social nothing. You talk about nothing.
Yes.
And
Right.
get all energized about nothing, and
Mm-hmm.
talk about politics and debate, and it gets you nowhere. So
Correct. I'm usually either really popular or persona non grata at cocktail parties, because the standard cocktail party conversation is this. It's, what's your name? Where are you from? What do you do? And the responses are always, oh, well, my name is this. When you say where you're from, there's always, I call it this surprise acceptance response, which is, oh, okay. People, where are you from? San Diego. Oh, okay. Everybody says this.
Yeah.
Anyway. So I try to skip right over that, and I'll walk right up to somebody and ask them what they like to do. What do you like to do?
Yeah.
People are somewhat taken aback. What scares the bejesus out of you?
Yeah.
What do you know now that or I'll ask an older person this, and this is a great one. What do you know now that you didn't know at my age that you wish you did? That's usually a great conversation starter.
Yeah. It's always good to go out with Sam into a social arena, because, everybody has their first impressions, and then they don't really realize how much educational ammo he has, I guess is how I'd put it, to where they start talking about something and he can just literally recite in kind of like Good Will Hunting, that movie there. And
I love that scene.
Yeah, that scene is great, and that happens quite a bit with you on different levels. But Sam's obviously a very educated person. He hasn't worked since he was born, and
that's not true.
Just kidding. He's just very successful in his work, and it's very quiet and quaint.
Interesting.
Right. But you never need to talk about work with people, because you're doing it in your own way, and you don't need to flashily show it to anybody.
Yeah, but it's interesting, because that's always one of the questions that comes up. People are like, how do you and they don't, and so many people don't want to really come right out and ask. So you just kind of do it for them. Are you asking how I generate revenue? How do I fund my life? Is that what you're asking? Are you asking if I'm a trust fund baby, or did I win the lottery, or, that sort of thing? And then they're taken aback, but then they're like, well, kind of, I mean, because nobody else is running around taking, globe trotting for 5 months at a time,
right,
or whatever. Very, very few people are. But the easy short answer is that it comes down to changing your attitude about certain things, and that can make a huge impact on your life and what you're able to do and the amount of freedom that you have.
Oh, just the amount of research you've done. I mean, some of the things you research and come up with, just understanding currencies and understanding, rental markets and understanding, God, there's so much I could talk about in that whole area, but you just do your work, and you don't impulsively jump into things. You really do the work before you go into things. And that's probably what allows you to hold on to your income and allows you to hold on to your assets, is because you're not just jumping from investment to an investment. Maybe you might do that in the stock market, but I don't know.
Yeah,
we don't usually have these conversations.
No, yeah, don't give me too much credit. I've done some impulsive things, and some of them have worked out really well, and some of them have not. I think I have been really fortunate. A couple times when I've seen something that looked really good, I've jumped on it and it's worked out well. So I'm not I live in Puerto Rico now. I literally bought the first house that I looked at, and I only shopped online, and I knew that I was like, wow, this is a deal. This place could be, a revenue generator. This will be great. And I, went to see it the day I got into that town, and made an offer that afternoon, a lowball offer for cash, and the people took it. And it's been great. And so far, I think we were talking about this yesterday, a decent ROI on a rental property is like 5%. A really good return is 8 to 10. I'm going to be at 17 or 18 minimum, and depending on how things go during the high season when the surf is good in the town that I'm in, I think it could go as high as 25%, and that's unbelievable. I mean, that's unbelievable, and that's something that you largely control yourself. You're not subject to the whims of what some jackass on Wall Street is doing, or what the Fed is doing, or anything like that. You're in a surf community where everybody on the Eastern Seaboard goes to escape the winter, and they're all used to paying $300, $400 a night for a hotel room, and you're doing an offering that's $150 a night, and people are like, "Oh my God, this is the greatest deal ever."
So, all right. So we're going to wind down on this podcast, but we're going to leave you guys with a little treat thanks to Sam. We're going to guarantee you, over 30% on your investments by listening to what Sam has to offer you.
Guarantee you. Are you talking about Willis?
Moving to Puerto Rico. Explain that, because nobody understands that. That's a guarantee, right, of over 30%.
No, that's true. Yeah. Okay.
We're going to guarantee you 30% on your money by doing exactly what Sam tells you. So this is going to be our parting gift to you. It's guaranteed. This is not an investment you're going to lose your money on. It's a guarantee.
Yeah. I see where you're coming from, Dennis, and you're actually absolutely correct. You freaked me out for a second there. It was like, oh my God, what are we getting into? So when you're computing your investment returns, you have to consider your actual after-tax return as what your return is. If you make 30% on something, and then you have to give up half of that in taxes, well, your effective tax rate at that point was 50% on your 50% of your gain, and your actual net return was only 15% instead of the 30%. And if you know anything about compounding, you know that even a 1% change in return over years, the compounding is insane. And if you can eliminate that tax, no matter what it is, even if it's only 2%, and right now, short-term capital gains are what, 18 or I don't know what the law is now. They've changed it, and at this point, I don't need to know, because here's the deal: Puerto Rico is a territory; it's not a state. And another one of the sound bites that Americans are so proud of is no taxation without representation. And I just want to branch off onto that for a second. It's not okay to steal my money unless I have a fat ass bureaucrat that is raising his hand for me in Washington. Then you can take as much as you want. That's what that means. No taxation without representation. The corollary to that is you can tax me as much as you want as long as
you have representation.
As long as I have a representative supposedly saying that it's okay. Anyway, so since Puerto Rico is a territory, they don't have a vote in Congress, and therefore they make their own tax policy. They are independent of the federal tax code. And for years, this didn't matter, because whatever the IRS did, Puerto Rico would just copy. And then Puerto Rico went down this path where they started handing out welfare to everybody who wanted it. And ultimately, they have determined that this is not a way to build a prosperous society. And the government a couple of years ago figured out that they were on a path to going completely broke. And they're further down that path now. But in an effort to ameliorate that circumstance, they passed a law, a series of laws, where they will give you a written 20-year exemption against short or long-term capital gains taxes, and a exemption from taxes on dividends and interest that are derived from Puerto Rican sources. So if you make your money via capital gains by playing the stock market, collecting option premium, buying and selling bonds, stocks, other
So if I go
equities,
and I buy Apple computers, so to speak,
okay,
and I make $1 million profit from buying and selling stock
you
for
buy
Apple,
it for $1 million, the stock doubles in 5 years, you sell it for $2 million.
or even a year.
Over any time period.
Right.
That money is tax-free to you. If you were in the United States, on that gain, you're going to be taxed at like $200,000. Let's say the tax rate is 20%. You're going to be taxed $200,000. Then you're in California, they're going to hit you for another 10%. So that's $300,000. And by living in Puerto Rico, your tax on that is zero. And it is a written 20-year guarantee from the Puerto Rican government.
So I'm going to repeat that again. If you make $1 million in the stock market and live in Puerto Rico, and we'll talk about how long that can be, you will get to keep 100% of that money by living there.
Correct.
So if basically the long story short is you can go live in a tropical wonderland
with 80-degree water and great surf and cheap real estate and coconuts falling off of trees and
lots of pina coladas.
Lots of pina coladas and everybody in a good mood because they're all on vacation and a broke government that cannot afford a police force to mess with you.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's an important one.
Yep, it is. You can do things and not get in trouble.
Yes, and you can make money.
Do legal things and not get in trouble.
Yeah, yeah. You can commit victimless crimes and no one will blow the whistle at you.
Yep. And get to keep all your money tax-free.
Yes.
So that's pretty huge.
That's
so
huge.
If that's not a good insight for you guys out there, we just gave you a free, if you made $1 million, $300,000.
Yeah. That is your 30% return. If you're in California.
A good life on the beach.
Yeah. And it's way, way more mellow down there.
It's
really nice.
So what's the rule on, now that people are like, oh, wow, I got to do that. So what's the rule on it? Do you have to stay there permanently? Do you have to never leave the country? Do you tell people what the rules are on that?
Well, the guideline is this, that Puerto Rico says that you have to be there 6 months out of the year, 183 days. After looking into it, what it actually is it's not so much that Puerto Rico wants to make sure you're there. It's that the IRS wants to make sure that you're not in the United States. So if you did 2 months in the U.S., 3 months in Puerto Rico, and 7 months bouncing around the globe, traveling and having a great time, you're pretty much good to go. And I'm not an attorney. Take this with a grain of salt. Do your own due diligence. All those things apply. There's no. I don't want to go too deep into this, other than to say that
read up on it.
Yeah. Read up on it. Google Act 22 Puerto Rico, and have your mind blown. And you could be 1 in a million, I am.
There's probably going to limit it to how many people too eventually.
Well, they might. When I say I'm 1 in a million, there's something like 330 million people in the U.S. and there's only about 330 people, U.S. citizens, that have gone down there and taken advantage of this.
So you're just, wow, isn't that amazing?
Yeah, and it's
a deal.
It's a deal. It's the only way to get a break as a U.S. citizen on your taxes.
So what if you have that $1 million or $2 million sitting in a bank account and you get interest on that? Do you have to pay capital gains on that?
If it's sitting in a Puerto Rican bank, my understanding is that you do not have to pay capital gains on that. But banks aren't paying anything anyways. A smarter strategy would be to buy a municipal bond fund that's paying, somewhere around 5.5% to 6.5%, and municipal bonds are always tax-free in the U.S.
Okay.
So, if you already have your money made, you're not going to derive a whole lot of benefit by buying municipal bonds in Puerto Rico, because they are the interest on those is already tax-free anywhere in the United States. But you will, if you're an investor, a trader, anything like that, and some people are going down there and getting really creative, you can definitely, if not zero out your tax bill, get it down to maybe 4%, depending on if you're running a company down there and things like that. It's phenomenal.
One more tip we can give them. I'm not sure if this one still exists, but I know you shared it with me before. If you go to countries like Colombia or something, you can actually get paid to start a business there. Is that still something that, because I know you shared that with me before. You were saying the Puerto Rican government will give you $35,000 or $50,000 to come there, live there, and start a business.
No, that was in Chile.
Chile, okay.
That was the Startup Chile program. They were doing that a couple of years ago. I don't know if they're still doing it. I imagine they are. I don't know for certain.
But there's probably other countries doing that as well. Probably.
Yeah, there are all. Yeah, well, this goes back to what we were saying before about countries starting to compete with each other for the best citizens, and they're offering incentives. And I know Estonia is doing an e-citizenship or e-residency program. All kinds of barriers to starting a business and becoming an entrepreneur are falling, and the United States is going to see more and more of its productive people leave and start businesses overseas and take their talents elsewhere until Congress gets off its butt and does something about the debt and the high levels of taxation and especially the high levels of regulation and the violent enforcement of those regulations.
Well, I know in California here we get a lot of benefits. We get extraordinarily expensive gas, water, and electricity.
Yes.
I mean, beyond what we can even talk about here today. But anyway, getting back to the positive, these are some 2 concrete, solid tips we've given you here today that you can take home. Even if you didn't like what we had to say here today, you have some great tips to go home and make 30% or more on your money because you listened to us here today on the 5-Minute Bard. So this is my great friend, Sam Wolanyk, in town from Puerto Rico. I really want to thank you guys for being a great audience today. This officially is our longest podcast ever, Sam.
Glad I could help.
Yeah. And we're up in over 45 minutes now. You try to keep them to 20.
Holy smokes.
It goes by fast, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah. And we want to thank you guys for being a great audience out there. And if you want more people like Sam or more people like me, even though you get me every day, keep on listening. And that's it today for everybody. We'll talk soon. Thanks for coming on, Sam.
Thanks for having me, Dennis. It was fun.
All right.